evacuates the statue of Queen Victoria, Darren?
Hang on, hold it. No.
Right, we're on live now.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon. I'm Darren Sanders. I'm the Liberal Democrat Cabinet Member for Housing and Preventing Homelessness, and welcome to the first virtual meeting of my portfolio. The meeting is being broadcasted to enable press and public to view it. Now, we're meeting virtually in response to the limitations placed on governance of the City Council by the COVID-19 pandemic. For the purposes of this meeting, the City Solicitor has advised that pursuant to Section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020, this meeting will be run by reference to the model standing orders as set out in the local authorities open brackets, coronavirus close brackets, open brackets, flexibility of local authority meetings, close brackets, regulations 2020 number 392, open brackets, the regulations. Good afternoon, Scott. Please can members and officers turn their microphones off when not speaking. So after all that, can I ask my opposition colleagues to introduce themselves, please?
Councillor Scott Pater Harris, Hilsey Ward.
Councillor Cal Corkery, Charles Dickens Ward.
Thanks, Scott and Cal. Maria?
Representing the Residents' Consortium.
Is Maria Cole. We also have a written representation from another consortium colleague, which we'll come to a bit later on. Now, could the officers present please introduce themselves? I will do first names, they can explain who they are. James?
Thank you, Councillor Sanders. So James Hill, Director of Housing, Neighbourhood and Building Services.
Alison?
Alison Troutman, Housing Business Partner.
Now, I went out of the order the City Solicitor gave me, so apologies. Joe?
Jo Bennett, Head of Business Relationships, Growth and Support.
Meredith?
Thank you, Darren. Meredith Hughes, Assistant Director, Buildings.
Wayne?
Wayne Layton, Finance Manager.
Joanne?
Joanne Wildsmith, Democratic Services.
And finally, not an officer, but someone the City Solicitor forgot, Simon.
Councillor Simon Bowser, Drayton and Farlington Ward. Thank you, Darren.
Not at all, Simon. And you're here as you're a councillor for the area where this proposal is due to happen if it happens. That's right, Simon, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I'll now turn to the agenda. Joanne, have we had any apologies for absence?
No apologies, everyone's present who's expected.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have anything interesting to declare? Especially Scott and Cal, I have nothing. Right, I'm getting shakes in the head there, that's good. Okay, so we're going to talk about Highgrove Lodge and the development of homes people can afford there. We'll start with the officer presentation. So James, could you kick off as the report is in your name?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Sanders. You're right, the report's in my name, but I'm going to ask Alison to introduce the report and others to follow, if that's okay.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, James.
Thank you, James. Thanks. Thank you, Darren. This report, and I apologise, I'm reading it there while looking at you. This report brings forward the recommendation for a capital spend of £5.1 million to deliver 6 new homes, which will house 24 adults with learning disabilities and or physical disabilities. The development will be on the old Highbury block in Drayton and Farlington. During the briefing, Councillor Corker, you asked me in relation to when it closed. The Highgrove building was closed in 2005. The day surface was closed in 2008 and it was demolished not long after. So it has been an empty site for a long time now. There has been a number of plans made, of which Councillor Bowser, Councillor Corker and Councillor Pater Harris and Councillor Sanders have all seen to deliver this. The build consists of 4 4-bedroom shared flats and 2 4-bedroom shared bungalows, all of which allow for people with physical disabilities to live in 24/7. They are very large properties. Some of our adults who will come to live in them and will be repatriated back to the city because we failed to deliver the homes that they need within the city are actually 24/7 bed bound. So hence, although we come across that we don't appear to be running very many properties, we are. We've done a design that allows aesthetically to blend in with what is already at Karen Avenue, with a block of flats at one end of Karen Avenue and then bungalows along the side of that. And it goes in line with the side of the houses on there. There was a question, Maria, you posed, which if you don't mind, I'll answer now, which is whether or not Honorary Alderman John Atchell had been involved as part of the scheme. John is very aware of this scheme, as he is with all of the schemes we do for adults with learning disabilities, as he sits within there, and I can go and visit him when I need to. If you're okay, I'm going to pass over to Wayne to do the finance comments and then to Meredith in relation to the energy.
I've not got much to add other than what's in the report. Just to say it's 5.1 million for homes for 24 individuals. It'll be funded through a mixture of unsupported borrowing and one-for-one receipts. Those are receipts from the sale of council houses, right to buy receipts, sometimes they're referred to, and or other external funding. So Alison, Joe and I are going to be working with Homes England, hopefully to secure that additional funding to put towards us. If we don't get that, then we'll use the one-for-one receipts. And then also the report also states that there is a saving within adult social care and for the CCG where we're not housing these clients in traditional commissioned residential care, and this should be a lot cheaper, which will help them. They'll avoid about £500,000 a year, and that's it.
Okay, does any other officer have anything else to add?
Yes, Councillor Sanders, I've got a bit of an explanation around the Appendix C, which is attached to the document. So at the briefing a couple of weeks ago, councillors asked a number of questions about the quality and the standard of the build, and Appendix C gives an outline, a brief outline of the energy efficiency standards that would be incorporated into the building. In Portsmouth, the local plans require that we attain at least 19% better than Part L1 of the building regulations, and the budget estimates and the sum of money that's been set aside for the build is based on attaining that standard, plus at least another 10% on top of that. In terms of what demonstrable installations and bits of equipment the residents would see within the build to attain those standards, we'd be making sure that we maximise the amount of solar panels that were attached to the building, both to the flats and the bungalows. We'd use solar power battery storage in the properties to maximise the amount of energy that can be used during the day, but also during the night. We'll be using low carbon, high efficiency heating systems. So moving away from gas central heating, but more of a drive towards air source or ground source heat pumps, and with the option as well, bearing in mind the requirements of the residents going into the block, because this is a supported living block rather than a general needs block. We could be considering putting in a micro CHP and a district heating system in there to maximise the efficiency of the block as well. The buildings will be built to a very high standard in terms of their thermal efficiency and ensuring that the thermal mass of the building has maxed out the amount of insulation we can install in the roof, the walls and the floor. And likewise, we'll be installing high efficiency LED lighting throughout both the domestic areas but also the communal areas, and in areas where we will have communal areas, the service charges for residents will benefit from the very competitive prices that the new energy and power and gas contracts are realising, and so residents will benefit from those prices as well. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. Now, I see that Scott has got his hand up. I wanted to do Simon, Maria, Scott, and Cal in terms of the speakers from here on in. Are you okay with that, Scott? I don't want to sort of run away from any comments that you have. You're fine with that, okay? If you could lower your hands, which no one else can see except me, that'd be great. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so Simon, as ward councillor, you have up to 6 minutes. The time is 4:41.
I don't think I'll take 6 minutes, Darren, but it's just to say that this development has the total support of the ward councillors. I think we've made that clear, and I think the report reflects that, which is nice to see. I can remember when this was closed down in 2005. It used to be an old people's home that was literally metal window frames and crumbling away. And then we couldn't rebuild on it because, surprise, surprise, it was in a flood zone. Always working on the principle of that area of Drayton was to flood, then the rest of Portsea Island would actually be in dire straits, to be quite frank with you. And we have had a number of weird and wonderful ideas from private developers that have come along over the years, but have never really taken a footing. And indeed, when they were talking about the old people's home going in at East Lodge, which ended up vastly over budget because it sort of didn't take into consideration drainage and whatever, it was actually the ward council that said, why can't you look at Highgrove Lodge as an alternative? But the flood zone argument came back. It's nice that we've actually managed to address that issue. And actually, we're apart from the fact that this is going to be hopefully a state-of-the-art building with the latest technologies, which will be fabulous, it'll be a good fit with the local area, particularly as we've had 3 blights, if you like, in that area of Drayton. We've had the Highgrove Lodge site, which has been a fly tip site and all manner of problems there. And almost directly adjacent to it, we've had the old Southern Electricity Depot and the old dairy sites. Southern Electricity has been developed into decent housing. I think the outline planning approval has been given for the dairy. They've started putting spades in the ground. Not quite shovel ready, but I won't crowbar that one in. But this would make a really good fit for the local area. So really, it's just to reiterate, it's got our complete support, and hopefully the funding can be secured and we can actually start to move this site forward. Thanks, Darren.
No, thank you for that, Simon, and thank you for your comments throughout this whole process. They've been very, very welcome. Maria.
Yes, Darren. Well, I've got my usual highlighting all over the paperwork, but I haven't got very much to say. I'll just run through. It was a good report. I was really pleased to know that Portsmouth is doing so much for people with disabilities. You keep hearing about other councils not doing very much, and I'm really glad that Portsmouth is. Point of clarification, please. I know it sounds crazy. What are 141 receipts? Can anybody tell me? Because I don't know. And the communal gardens, are they going to have tables and chairs so that the residents can get together and meet each other? And I think Alison has answered my question about Alderman Patrill. So it was just, yeah, the communal gardens. And what are 141 receipts? That's
Okay.
it.
Thank you, Maria. Wayne, what are 141 receipts for the massed hordes watching this?
So when someone exercises their right to buy and purchases a council house, the city council are allowed to keep that receipt provided they provide additional housing or contribute towards a regeneration scheme. So we're allowed to fund this development up to 30% using one-for-one receipts. We're not allowed to use any other grant with those one-for-one receipts. So it's either a grant or one-for-one receipts, or right to buy receipts is probably a better way of putting it.
Thank you.
Darren, can I just interject on something
Yeah, of course you can. No, feel
Maria
free.
said? I appreciate that I'm a deputation. Probably not a lot of people are familiar with the area, but just north of the dairy site, which is effectively to the east of the Highgrove Lodge site, if you like, there is a significant area of scrubland with an old pond. It was an area that has been attracting a lot of antisocial behaviour. Now, the developers of the dairy site wanted to take on that piece of land and put disabled, and this is before Highgrove Lodge, disabled-friendly paths into it and create, if you like, a small sort of nature reserve, which would obviously enhance their property because it would do away with an area that's antisocial behaviour, but also put in an area that was going to be attractive as a sort of a wildlife garden, etc., which for some reason the planning department didn't want to go down that particular route. I would suggest, and I can see officers making notes, that it may well be worth exploring that again to see that we haven't lost that opportunity, because following on from what Maria has just said, you could have right on the doorstep there a small wildlife area with disability access that would be absolutely perfect for the residents of Highgrove Lodge.
Well, thank you for that, Simon. A derelict piece of land. So I've been speaking to Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, who are running the Wilding Portsmouth project, which is excellent. And there's a bird in my own ward, which is up for that. And I spoke to them about a spare piece of land up in Copner, just the north of Burfields Road, which I know they're interested in. So there's a whole raft of good things that we can do around that, and I would hope that officers could go away and have a chat and see if it's a runner, and then if it is or it isn't a runner, then go back to Councillor Weems, Councillor Bowshering, also the three councillors, Drayton and Farlington, as well as Scott, Cal and me, just to see if it's a runner, and if there are any barriers, we could see if we can try and work together to overcome them. Does that sound all right, Simon?
That'd be fine. I'm just looking at the opportunity there to actually enhance the offering that we're looking to put in there. I mean, obviously, it will be a community space, but if it's designed correctly, then it can benefit everybody. And it's literally 5 minutes walk from the Highgrove Lodge site, if that.
No, that's a good idea. And as I said, I think if so, the guy at Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust is a guy called Andy Ames, A-M-E-S.
Yeah.
I know I've already put housing people in touch with him about this piece of land in Copner, and things have strangely happened. So they might happen again. Maria, can I apologise on Simon's behalf for butting in to you? But was there anything else you wanted to add to that? I'm interested in how we can actually make sure that the seatings at tables can encourage interaction whilst it's being coronavirus compliant. Can we? Or is it going to be built in 2023, whereby hopefully the vaccine will work? Joe and Alison?
Can I just think there will be
like.
Thank you, Darren. There will be tables and chairs in the garden. We do like to, although we like to keep independent from each other, there will be an opportunity for people to mix and to create that communal way of living as well.
Okay, I think that's helpful, and hopefully it can be done in a way that is consistent with what is right for the people who will be living here.
Of course.
And that's absolutely, that's the first thing. So I'll now go to, no, I have a written representation from a Marda, who is also from the Residents Consortium, who usually comes to these meetings when we meet in person. She's written to say that she agrees with the proposal and thinks it is very important. Which is excellent news, and I'm delighted to hear that. So what we now do is we then move to questions and comments from my opposition spokespeople. So Scott, could you go first as you raised your hand earlier?
Providing the technology survives, Darren, that's always a worry at the moment.
I understand you've been frozen out, so like me at a cabinet meeting to discuss homelessness.
Yeah.
So hopefully you'll be a bit better and I'll shut up to make sure you're okay.
Yeah, that would be helpful, thank you. External funding, obviously, what discussions, it's mainly one for Wayne to be honest, what discussions have been had regarding external funding, and is it expected for that funding to come through? Are we expecting Homes England to foot the rest of the bill? I open it up to Wayne or whoever wants to answer.
So Alison could probably describe it better, but the first part of this process is we do the report and we look at see whether we've got a viable scheme, and there is an option where we can apply for cash funding, or we can apply for affordable homes grant, or we can use one receipts. These are all options that we've got. What we've got at the moment is we've got surety to know that we can secure one receipts because that's in our bank account and we can fund it. What the report says is that if we're not able to get external funding, we use one, but we're less sure as to whether we'll get the external funding, and that normally is down to the central government's funding programme and what's available at the time. Alison, could you maybe describe the cash funding? Probably because you're closer to it than I am, aren't you?
Of course. So currently, the Care and Specialist Housing, which is the fund that we have bid to in the past to support our new housing for supported living, they're currently in the Homes England programme, isn't a new cash funding. Homes England have had their money presented to them, but what they haven't been able to do as of yet is to allocate it to programmes. Once there is a programme that I can bid to support this, then the report allows me to bid to that to support it. The issue will be is that when you have Homes England funding, you can use one receipts as well.
No.
So we have both. So the report gives us gives James a delegation for me to go and apply for some Homes England funding. And once there is a programme there that I can bid to, that is exactly what I will do.
Okay, so we're not actually that far along with Homes England at all, really, because they haven't got their programme of funding in place. So we're sitting playing a waiting game, effectively.
To a point, yes, but if we look at historically, we have bid for funding and been very successful. £4 million worth of successful funding. They are aware of the scheme. We share the plans with them, and in my quarterly meetings, I'm very open and honest about the fact we have a scheme that all they need is a programme for us to bid to.
Yeah, okay. It's not a criticism of you, Alison. It's more of a criticism of the fact that it's taken them quite a while to get a programme set up. So, you know, we're probably in a good place with this project because it is fundamentally a good project. One-for-one receipts, Wayne. Just a quick issue. So we don't, let's say worst case scenario, we don't get the money from effectively the government, which is what everyone probably wants, and we have to use the one-for-one receipts. How much is that going to be to top that up, Wayne? Is that just about £2.5 million?
Wayne, you're on mute.
It's not a bad thing.
God, there has to be one, doesn't there? If it was me. No, it's £1.5 million.
Okay,
it's the maximum amount we can use, 30% of the development.
So you can use 30% of the development. We've got £2.5 million put to one side, so the rest to be in unsecured borrowing.
1.5 million and one-for-one receipts, and the remainder will be in unsupported borrowing.
Okay. For the one-for-one receipts, just a quick one. I was just made aware of something over the. Well, actually, I spoke to James about it on Friday. Do the one-for-one receipts? Does that include houses that are sold by PCC at auction? So I know there have been 5 that have been up recently. Is that including the one-for-one receipts, or is that going to a separate pot?
No, that goes into a separate pot. So the one-for-one receipts are where tenants have exercised their right to buy.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just thought it was just interesting that we've got 5 houses that went up for auction and we're not using them to fund anything. Okay, just interesting point.
Well, they're not being used in this scheme.
Okay. If you could tell me which scheme they're going to be used in, I'd be grateful.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Wayne. But other than that, I'm quite happy with this scheme. It seems very reasonable. I think Alison and Joe, when they showed me previously, were very in depth and gave a lot of information. And I think it's a wholeheartedly good scheme, and it's good that the ward councillors are also supporting and on board. So ever grateful. Quite happy to support this one, Darren.
Okay, thank you for that, Scott. I saw both James and Simon put hands up. Did they want to say anything at all? Or Simon didn't put his hand down?
I probably didn't put mine down. Hold on, how do I do that?
Okay, that's fine. Okay,
like
okay.
That?
Right,
so,
well,
okay.
That's excellent. I'm pleased. Cal, did you have anything? Your questions and comments, please.
Thank you, Darren. I've got a few comments. I think I've probably exhausted a lot of the questions I would have had over the various briefings we've had about this already. So I'll try to just focus on the comments on what we know. I think it's a good thing that this scheme is being brought forward. There's obviously a desperate need for affordable housing across the city, and particularly housing that's orientated towards the needs of people with disabilities. I know that adult social care often struggle to find decent quality and affordable placements for their clients. So the fact that the housing part of the council is able to link up with them and support them in this way, in addition to the cost savings it brings about, I think is a very progressive thing and the right way to go. I think it's probably worth just commenting on the use of the affordable rent tenancies, which I know is something I've talked about a few times, but I think it's worth just mentioning every time that the affordable rent tenancies being used will be a lot more expensive than what people will traditionally perceive to be council rents. I think council rents are quite often deemed to be around 50% of market, whereas affordable rent can be up to 80%, and in supported housing, I think maybe even a bit more. In this scheme, in the briefings, we were told that that's not likely to have a particular impact on the service users due to their particular circumstances and unlikely to be in employment, was the indication we were given. So if that is still the case, then I take the point. It just means that government, through housing benefit, will pay the increased rent rather than the tenants, which is positive for the tenants, but it's worth bearing in mind that that cost is still being met somewhere along the way. One of the main issues I was interested in with this scheme was the green and sustainability standards. Obviously, the council declared a climate emergency last year, and since then, some progress has been made towards looking how all parts of the council work together to bring about a greener city and one that's not taking us further towards climate disaster. I appreciate the additional appendix that was added. I think that's useful. I think that's useful for us as members to know what's going on. I also think it's necessary for the wider public to be able to access that information on each and every significant council decision that's being made, but particularly ones that involve construction of new buildings. So there's that public accountability there about which standards are being aspired to and achieved. I do wonder with this whether further could be done, more could be done in order to achieve higher green standards. I know we're still obviously some way off, for example, a passive house would be the ideal, the highest possible green standards that could be achieved in a new building. And actually, those are the standards that we need to be achieving pretty soon if we're going to get anywhere near the kind of targets that we need to in order to save the planet. Last point, there's been quite a few comments made on this call, also in briefings, and I think it's also referenced in the paperwork about this type of development being a good fit for the area. And I'm just interested to tease out a little bit what that means. I think it's interesting that we've got the kind of full-hearted support of the three Tory councillors for Drayton and Farlington for new council housing in their area. That's very much to be welcomed. I wonder if it is at least in part because they can then portray it as not being your normal type of council housing. It's not going to be general needs council housing, where people that you might ordinarily perceive to be living in council housing are going to be housed. And I do wonder whether that is the decision and that perception has played into this in some way. My concern would be that we're going to end up with areas of the city that don't have new traditional general needs housing because it's not deemed to be the right fit for that area. And all that's going to do is further concentrate general needs housing, and the issues that quite often come with that in particular areas. So generally, I'm supportive of the development. I think it's always good to be building new council housing. I'd prefer if it could be more affordable often and aspire towards greener standards. But I think we're making good progress and being able to report on what's happening and hold the administration to account. So happy to support proposals, and I thank everyone for the work that's gone into them so far.
Darren, we just have you on mute.
Sorry about it. My turn to get the fall foul of this system. I've got both. I don't normally go for responses, but I think some people have been specifically mentioned here. So Simon and Scott, please respond, and then I'll ask officers to respond if necessary.
Yeah, I think just probably my knowledge of Drayton and Farlington as a ward that I've grown up in is probably better than Cowes, but Highgrove Lodge was actually an old people's home site. So it is a site that, if you like, lends itself to something similar. Hence, well, as I said earlier on, and I don't know whether you missed it or not, Cal, but it was a site that the ward council suggested as a location for a new old people's home that was originally planned for East Lodge in our ward. So we were actually suggesting that. Talking about affordable housing, I've also mentioned the two sites there that are delivering something in the region of 500 new properties into Drayton and Farlington. That's the old dairy site and the SEB site, and perhaps go and have a look at those, because there's a large amount of affordable housing that has been actually put into those. We also have a large number of our properties in the Havant Road area that have actually been bulldozed, and McCarthy and Stone have put in a lot of their sorts of properties there, and including the old Butcher School site, if you can remember that, because I certainly can. It was my maiden speech on that particular subject. That was actually turned into a large amount of assisted living and affordable housing for elderly people when we actually went down the route of the Mary Rose School. So I appreciate that Labour don't have a significant presence in Drayton and Farlington other than to park diesel buses in cycle lanes, but we do have a fair mix of properties to cater for all sorts and all types of residents, disabled or otherwise, in Drayton and Farlington. And I'm more than happy to take you round if you want to come off the island at some point, Cal.
Well, there's an offer. I look forward to being taken up. Scott?
I suspect it'd be Councillor Bosher on his bicycle as well. He's quite keen on that at the moment. So more so, it's about I think Cal mentioned about the site and why the site was chosen. And I think this harpers back to conversations we had, Darren, actually, when I first became the opposition spokesperson, you became the cabinet member, about finding the right sites for people with assisted living and the people with assisted needs. And it was more of a case of, we actually both, I think, agreed at the time that it was about finding what was best for the residents of the city. And I think Alison might have alluded to this earlier. This is actually going to bring us residents we've had to send away to bring them back, and save ourselves a lot of money in the process. So I don't think the actual site is an issue. I think the point that Cal's made is quite benign. I think it's about doing what's best for the residents, and I know that's something that you, Darren, were very keen on, in ensuring that this sort of housing was important when you become the administration, and it's something that I know that I wholeheartedly support you on. So I just wanted to reaffirm that today, because I think it's a very important site, and it's a very important for those people's needs who need this sort of housing. And I think we don't have enough of it as it is. So, I think Cal's actually barking up on the wrong tree when he's talking about what site, because there's various sites in the city that have this sort of housing. It's not just because it's in one place. It's all over the city. I think maybe he needs to leave Charles Dickens a little bit and go and open his eyes and see what else is around.
Okay, thank you for that, Scott. Did officers want to respond to any of Cal's comments before I try and sum up the situation? James?
I think Councillor Sanders and members, just to reinforce that it was helpful at the briefing for members to draw attention to the lack of detail about the energy standards that we would be achieving, hence the appendix appearing after that. So my thanks. And as we proceed with other developments, we will make sure that that's included in the draft reports as we work through it. We will naturally seek to achieve the highest standard possible. This scheme is still in its early stage in the sense of what you're giving permission to do is proceed now. And as we work through the detail and the detail of the designs, we will continue to reconsider what standards we can achieve. I don't know as officers we have anything to add to the discussion about the site other than it does lend itself to this type of development and we're pleased we can bring it forward to you.
Okay, thank you for that, James. I have a couple of questions, and then I'll try and sum up the discussion. The total amount of money is £5 million, which sounds like a lot of money, and some people think it's a lot of money. Why is the figure so high for this particular site? Is it because of the people that we're putting on the site?
It is, Darren. So as I said to you before, the people are going to be have physical disabilities as well. There are a number of people who, as an authority, we place out of the city because they do not need their beds. So when you have to make accommodation that's suitable for a bed to be wheeled around, you automatically have to have much larger bedrooms, much larger wet rooms, much larger corridors. So the size of the buildings has to be taken into consideration when you're doing this.
Okay, thank you for that, Alison. Wayne, Cal talked about affordable rents and stuff like that. Two questions relate to that. Is the idea that people would be able to afford the rent? So in other words, nobody who can't pay goes in. And also, is this rent level just a matter of viability? That this is the one rent level that will make the project stack up and so happen?
In the answer to the first question, yes. No one will go in there if they can't afford to live there, if that's the right way of putting it. And the second question about viability, yeah, because the cost of the development is quite high, as Alison's spoken about. If I try to model this at a social rented level, it wouldn't be a viable scheme.
Okay, thank you for that. Cal, you wanted to come back. If you do this briefly, I don't normally do this, but if you do this briefly, then I'll try and sum up.
We seem to have a bit of to and fro today, don't we? So I'm sure you can allow it. It's only a very brief question, point of fact, really, because I'm unsure myself. When was the last time that the local authority delivered a social rent property in the city?
Is that a question for me? I've only been in post 2 years, and I haven't done one yet.
Okay, so right, so I'll try and sum this up, and I'll try and go through various points. I want to start with some of the points that Scott raised. I think when we resumed control of Portsmouth in 2018, we saw that many sites have been empty for years, whether they've been old folks' homes, whether they've been individual houses, or whatever, some sheltered housing combination. And we all thought these were all private properties. And so what we've done is we try to say, well, they shouldn't be empty, they should be full. We've got people on the waiting list, we've got various categories of people who need them. Now, if it's like this site, then we try and match it up to where it goes. It's not a class thing. I mean, the biggest expansion in social housing, socially rented housing in this city is in my ward, because it's the old prison. And that was secured by Liberal Democrat councillors arguing for homes Portsmouth people can afford. And I'm delighted that that's happening. So we do what is best for the people of the city and try and match sites rather than make sure they're empty. If that means, for instance, that sometimes, as has happened over the decades, a site costs more to do up than it does to sell, so that we can actually then use the receipts of selling it to buy more council housing, so having more council housing at the end of it, then I'm prepared to take that rather than spend years doing up a property that's been empty for years, because we need to get people off the waiting list. So it's not a class thing. It's more around making the best places available. I'm delighted about the unanimous consensus about this site. If we get through a full council meeting tomorrow with unanimous consensus, it might finish tomorrow, and I think that will be helpful for all of us. I think the thing here is about the cohort. We have got lots of people with physical and with learning disabilities who need homes. There's some incredibly good developments. Some of them are in my ward, some of them are in Cosham, some of them are in other wards in the city as well. And I'm delighted we've been able to secure this site. It also shows that, yet again, we're investing in the whole of the city, not just in part of the city. I take on board Cal's points, because Cal's points about green developments are exactly similar to my own. We have to be as green as possible if we're going to begin to deliver the climate emergency. Now, we've been very good at that. The biggest single passive house development in Britain is in Somerstown. It's in Cal's ward, and it's called Wilmcote House, where we have refurbished it. You can't call it passive house, you've got to call it something else, Enefit, but it's passive house standards. And we've been delighted to do that. It took ages, but we're delighted to do that. And I'm very keen to have the greenest possible developments across the whole city, because we do have to make sure they're as green as possible. We can't have sites that endeavour to be as green as possible. They have to be as green as possible. And that's why I hope people will support Councillor Vernon Jackson and Councillor Mason's motion to that effect tomorrow. So as far as I can see, this is a very good development. It provides a site that's been empty for years with a home. It provides a need that we have in the city and gives people a home. And I think with the suggestions that Simon Bosher and the Drayton and Farlington councils have gone along with or mentioned earlier on, that will be a major help. We can't afford to have sites empty for years. And hopefully, in this case, very soon, we won't. So on that basis, Joanne, I'm happy to agree this decision, and so that we can proceed with this site. And apparently there is no other business, which is probably good, because it means we can all have our tea. So I close this meeting at 12 minutes past 5. Thank you very much to everyone who's turned up, and I'm sure I look forward to seeing some of you at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Have a pleasant evening, and thank you so much. Cheers.
Bye.